President Joe Biden there in shirt sleeves at an automobile manufacturing plant, a truck manufacturing plant in Allentown, Pennsylvania, playing the cheerleader in chief, you might say, for his infrastructure plan. But also, he wanted to emphasize one aspect of his economic policy that he's talked about and that he strengthened today, and that is his effort to get more products manufactured, to rebuild American manufacturing. He has that in common with President Trump, who tried to do so essentially through trade wars, through blocking the importation of products manufactured elsewhere to try to protect American manufacturers and build things up that way. There were fewer manufacturing jobs at the end of his presidency than there were at the beginning. Biden is trying a different tack. He wants essentially to toughen the standards for Buy American laws, enforce them more strictly, and invest $50 billion in manufacturing things like computer chips in this country. In particular, what the president announced is that as far as the federal government is concerned, the federal government is governed by a Buy American law. And that law requires that the product be substantially manufactured in America. The president noted that over the years, substantially manufactured had gone down to mean only 55% of the product had to be manufactured in America, and that was never really enforced or checked. This has been a long time complaint by the manufacturing unions, who are very close to the president. So today the president announced that he'd be toughening enforcement, and that the federal government requirement that products bought by the federal government needed to be bought in America, and 55% of them needed to be substantially made in America. He upped that to 75%, and he hopes that that will help American manufacturing. I want to bring in our White House correspondent, Mary Alice Parks, who's with us right now on this. This is classic Bidenism, and I wonder, Mary Alice, from a political perspective, is the White House essentially looking at polls softening around Biden, that as he gets saddled, as every president does, with significant challenges, the pandemic roaring back, the economy up and down, he's trying to get out there and remind people, what he does stand for, especially those blue-collar voters so crucial in his coalition.
Yeah, this was essentially a campaign speech. I think you're exactly right. This was very political, classic Biden, his standard talking points. I think it's very possible his team is aware they need to have him out there on the road more. It's also summer, and we were sort of expecting this. We know that the Senate was trying to wrap this work on a bipartisan infrastructure deal, but then Democrats were going to try after that in the month of August to sell a Democrat-only deal, a really expensive deal that includes a ton of funding and spending for that kind of care human infrastructure. And so we'd been told for months that they were planning to hit the road. I had a conversation with Senator Bernie Sanders' team. He's planning to hit the road as well. I think they are aware that they need to be out talking to people if they're going to be trying to move these massive pieces of legislation through Capitol Hill.
He certainly does have an ambitious agenda that, if enacted, he's confident will have an impact on people's lives. Some of the people become quite alienated from government and politics, turning to all kinds of different solutions and conspiracy theories and candidates. But how is that going? How likely are those big packages to get through? What's the state of play there?
Right now, it's looking pretty good. I was on Capitol Hill most of last week, and it was clear that both sides of the aisle were trying to get this done. Negotiators staying late into the night, overnight. They don't do that when they're not convinced that this is going to work. And nothing motivates lawmakers like a deadline. They want to go home in August, so they feel like the clock is ticking. They want to get this done. And I think Democrats in particular obviously have even more motivation. They feel a real urgency that unless they can deliver in concrete ways to the voters, they're not going to have much to run on in a few years. They know that they were given the green light and control in the House, the Senate, and the White House, and that puts a lot of pressure on them to bring something home. They need to be able to campaign on something concrete, and I think they are feeling that urgency right now.
And they need to stay united, which for Democrats can be difficult. The comedian Will Rogers saying, "I belong to no organized political party. I'm a Democrat." But once again, on politics, I said his polls are softening. Actually, he's pretty consistently somewhere between 50 and 55%. What's changing is that the opposition to him seems to be hardening. Is the White House concerned about his political stature right now?
They're concerned on the few issues that we know he's really losing ground. Gun control and crime, immigration, and COVID response, especially that last one. For a long time, it feels like a long time watching it. It's been about 6 months since he's been in office. But for a while, he's enjoyed a cushion there. I think that the average American really felt like his response to this pandemic was a big plus, that he was taking the science seriously, that he was moving in big, fast, bold ways in the vaccine rollout. But there's a lot of frustration now with the vaccines slipping, with the numbers slipping, with concerns about the Delta variants. And in the last week, this new conversation again about whether mask mandates will come back in Washington, in New York, in California. I think the White House is very concerned about the politics around that. This is a White House that's been, very concerned about sticking to the science. They want to listen to what the CDC is saying. They don't want to ever be in a position of second guessing the CDC, but they know that it is tough politics right now to tell Americans they might have to accept what feels like a slip backwards.
No question, and it is typical in epidemics, the history of them dating back to the Middle Ages. People get weary. They get weary, they get angry. There have been protests about plague and pandemic, for 1,000 years if it goes on too long, which, it's just out of the control of most people. Let me ask you about, he's not wearing a mask, I'm looking at him right now, in Allentown. He was very conscientious about that in the beginning of his presidency. Obviously, he's vaccinated. I assume they checked the people who were going to be there. But there may be mask mandates in Washington, where he lives. He's talking about vaccine mandates. How is he going to go forward personally? Do you think we'll see the president in a mask again?
The White House has basically said maybe. We might see the president in a mask again if he ends up doing an event, traveling to an area with a high transmission rate where that is the local guidance. We've seen this conversation where even vaccinated Americans, if they're in an area with high transmission rates, should consider again wearing a mask indoors. And the White House does not want to be seen contradicting the CDC in any way. They've told us to buckle up, that we might see those visuals again. I think they're going to do everything they can to avoid it. I think that they want to project confidence in this space. They want to project economic as well as sort of health recovery in this space. They're not going to like those visuals, but it's going to be really tricky. And as far as the vaccine mandates, I think that that's really tricky for them too. I think they're getting a lot of pressure from within their own party to kind of leverage the force of the federal government in the same way we were talking about just now with the Made in America campaign. The federal government is this huge shopper, a huge consumer. It can move markets when it decides how to use its purchasing power. The federal government in the same way could make an unbelievable difference, the theory goes, in the race to vaccinate America if it just mandated vaccines. On the other hand, they are very aware that that could backfire. It could look like Washington dictating your health in a way that that could lead to more frustration, more rejection of these vaccines.
That is the quandary, the dilemma that the president faces. Mary Alice Parks, thanks very much for being with us and helping us understand what the president is doing at this point in his presidency.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.